Alrighty, it's the big finale, well, sort of. Supernatural Season 5. So, ultimately, I do like this season. I think it's definitely better than last season, but ironically, I actually have a lot more nitpicks with this season, even though I actually did like this season, and it's nowhere near as bad as Stargate Atlantis' fifth season, which is the season that I have the most nitpicks with, but that one genuinely is the worst season and is a huge step down from the rest of them. You'll figure out what I mean when I post that video. I actually have made it this time. But anyway, so jumping into it, continuing on with what the last season had been building up, Lucifer's rise, where a lot more demons are being released, and that kind of thing. You do get the feeling that things are getting a little bit more desperate, even though tons of episodes are still just episode by episode, bits of Sam and Dean just confronting whatever random demon things are popping up. And while that is the premise of the show, I have to admit, the bits where they keep changing between let's just do what we normally do, let's focus on the devil, but what about our choices? Yeah, again, it gets repetitive, but it's even worse this time because they know that there's a greater fight and responsibility to face, but they really aren't facing it. Now, like Season 3, that made sense because even though there was a little bit more hope that things could be fixed, it was even tougher then to figure out what you can really do about it because, well, let's face it, there's all kinds of suggestions to combat the devil, but there's not really any good suggestions to keep yourself out of hell after having booked yourself a one-way ticket. Yeah. And I have to admit, I was fairly impressed with what the show continued to do from last season, portrayal major bits of religion in a more realistic way, because, well, let's face it, this is based on, a couple of, like the Four Horsemen, for instance. It's based on a couple of descriptions in various religious texts of how they are, because, I'm sure the names are correct, and the behavior, well, given how this whole series has been about various types of demons and spirits possessing human bodies and then continuing on with, chaos. Of course it's not going to be as accurate, but this is meant to portray it in that way. So I have to admit, what they did with the new angels and demons bit, Lucifer himself, and all those figureheads from other religions, that was pretty creative. Nice. And even though it does add a little bit of realism to it, I have to admit, though, I'm not as big of a fan of the people arguing between religions, or a person from religion arguing against somebody that doesn't believe in religion at all, because I feel like that's actually the main source of conflict and reason for intolerance in this world today, because, if we could just, ignore the passages in these religions that argue everyone that doesn't believe in this religion is doomed because they were written back when humanity was just being a bitch to everyone that didn't behave the way they did, and many would argue it still is. If we could just, ignore that stuff, this world would be a better place. But because we're just so intolerant to diversity and so are these figureheads, it's pretty annoying. Along with that idiotic woman in the 99 Problems episodes, just gunning that guy down purely because he doesn't believe in your religion. Stupid bitch. Anyway. Yeah. And I was also pretty glad that recurring characters came up in this season, because Ellen and Joe, they finally come back. Sure, they're killed off pretty quick, but what they did with them I thought was good, but I really wish they had done more of an explanation as to where they've been for the past 2 seasons, because wasn't Ellen there at the end of Season 2 when Yellow Eyes got all the demons out, even though he himself was killed? I'll come back to him a little bit later. Okay, and I was also pretty impressed with what they did with Adam because, taking a character who was basically dead the first time we saw him, and then actually we established his purpose as having even greater importance than you would think. That's pretty creative, especially since it's based off just various religious texts that they managed to put into a plot for an overall arc. I gotta admit, I'm impressed with what the writers did there. Okay, what else is there to talk about? That I liked about it. Hang on, I think I have more things to say. Nah, I think you can get the idea. So now, jumping into what I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the video, that I have a lot of nitpicks with the season. Well, one of them I've already discussed, all the bickering between beliefs. Hate that, real life and in fiction. What else was there? Oh yeah, forced deaths in this season. Now, this season really had too much of killing the character off and then bringing the character back, because this happened to Angel several times, and Kaz died, I think, like 3 times in this season, sort of. There was a lot of unnecessary going on with that. The arguments between Sam and Dean about what is important, I don't really like it this season. Now, I've mentioned this in a couple of my reviews for the other seasons, particularly seasons 2 and 3. But it feels more annoying here because the foe they're up against is greater than the other foes, and this time there actually are possible ways to counter it, because in season 2 they're dealing with the guilt that they basically killed their father, and in season 3 they're dealing with the fact that Dean went to hell, but basically he sold his soul to keep someone close to him alive, when that's been done before in fiction. I can't tell you any examples, but that has been done, okay? So it's a little bit annoying here, and this time I can't totally identify with them. So that sucked. And then there were also too many bits of characters like turning over to the dark side, because like Anna going from being the angel that's rebelling against the system to, even though this is never told, Zachariah, I bet, freeing her, and then she turns on Kaz and everybody else, travels back through time, and they have to kill her. Really? You had to have her do that? Sheesh. That was so annoying. I mean, like, had you done, like, a gradual shift, it wouldn't be as bad, but have her be a prominent character in Season 4 with very good themes, but then putting her in this season where she appeals once and has gone over to the dark side, pretty annoying. Yeah. Although I am glad that Sam and Dean and everybody else basically took over her role from Season 4 about telling Kaz how to, like, think for himself, and it is interesting seeing Kaz, behave more like a human in this season, because I haven't seen all of this movie, but I've seen bits of City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, and in that movie, he's an angel at the beginning, spoiler alert, but 2/3 into the movie, he makes himself human and then gradually starts experiencing human stuff a lot closer, going through the gap. Kaz himself is going through that because, like, when he's recording the voicemail for his phone, he can't figure out why he has to say his name, and I couldn't figure it out when I first did that, but there you go. So that was interesting. So jumping back to what I don't like, sorry about that. Really? There's only, I think, 2 or 3 more things. Okay, so next is, the behavior of, like, the antagonist for this season. So, obviously, the main antagonist for this season is Lucifer, but given how many episodes he's in and the tone of them, I'm looking at it and I go, I'm not scared of this guy or what he'll do. I gotta be honest, I was far more nervous about what Zachariah, Ruby, Yellow Eyes, the police chief, and what tons of the episode-by-episode antagonists would do than I was nervous about the devil himself. That says something. It means that they didn't really do a good job of making me nervous. I should be scared stiff at what this guy's going to do, and I'm just standing there and I'm like, alright, so you're gonna, pardon me, try and kill him with the Colt. You're not gonna be able to kill him. One, that's too easy, and two, it's the devil. He himself says, I'm a fallen angel, so he's not a demon. You know? For crying out loud. And like Zachariah, he appeared in far more episodes than Lucifer did this season, and one thing they don't explain is how he went to the dark side, because is God really directing him around that much just so he can die? For crying out loud, that's even worse than Zachariah and a couple of the other angels from the last season arguing that, yeah, we want Lucifer to get out. Sheesh. So not only do you really want to condone half of planet Earth, but you want to condone half of you guys to die? Seriously? Pfft. So yeah, good job of trying to make it seem like you actually care. Come on. Yeah, I should have backed Sam and Dean more in Season 4 while they were claiming that the angels were being beep. Yeah. And then finally, I think the only other thing to mention is the final confrontation with Lucifer, Michael, and Dean there. It didn't really carry that much weight to it. I mean, like, I was sorry to see Kaz and Bobby die, but how they appear out of nowhere, how did nobody see them, for crying out loud, you know? And I mean, like, the way that Lucifer and Michael went down, now that was good! I never would have thought of that, but it just didn't carry any real tone to it. I wasn't scared, I wasn't nervous, and I wasn't really that sad. Heck, I was more nervous for Bobby than Lucifer and Michael falling into that hole. But even then, I was like, 50 Cent says some angel's gonna show up and resurrect either Kaz or Bobby or both, and that's exactly what happened. But I have to admit, the rest of what they did for that last episode I liked. You know, Dean going to Lisa, showing that there was actually one relationship that he did care about. Well, that went on a little while, even though, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm mostly talking about nitpicks. So, in hindsight, this was a good way to potentially end the series, even though the finale didn't carry that much intensity as I would have liked, but it was still very good in every other aspect. There are things I don't like about it, but this was definitely better than Season 4, and that's really all I can say. Will I continue with the show? I'm thinking yeah, I will, but I'm not going to be in as big of a hurry to do so now. And just so you know, I'm allowing comments now.